Hello, my friends. Sit back and get comfortable. Let your shoulders drop. Let your face relax. Take a slow breath in and a slow breath out. Imagine for a moment that the room is quiet. Maybe you are in a small kitchen. Maybe you are near a window. The light is soft. The air is still. You hear a small sound in the background, like a kettle far away or wind outside. Now imagine you have a piece of bread in your hands. It is warm, not hot. You smell it before you eat it. The smell is simple. It feels safe. It feels like a place you know, even if that place is far away. You pull it apart slowly. You hear a soft tear. You see the inside. You feel warmth on your fingers. For many people, this is normal. It is part of the day. It is not a special event. But this normal food holds a very old story. It comes from early human life, from firelight, from stone tools, and from steady hands. It comes from people who lived close to the land and had to work for every meal. Have you ever wondered how bread became so common? Today, bread is everywhere. You can buy it quickly. You can choose many kinds: soft bread, hard bread, thin bread, thick bread. You can eat it alone or with other food. But long ago, bread was not quick. It was not easy. It was time and effort, done again and again. Long ago, before big cities and before machines, people woke up and looked for food. They did not open a cupboard and choose. They walked, they watched, and they searched. Some days they found meat. Many days they did not. So they gathered what they could from the ground and from bushes: roots, nuts, small fruits, leaves, and also seeds. In many places, people noticed tall grasses. They noticed that the tops of these grasses held tiny seeds. The seeds were small, but they gave energy. A handful could help the body keep moving. At first, people ate seeds as they were. They chewed them and swallowed them. But seeds are hard. They are not easy to break with teeth. So people learned a simple thing. If you crush the seeds, you get more from them. They used stones. One stone lay flat on the ground. Another moved in the hand, back and forth, back and forth. Seeds cracked. The hard pieces turned into rough powder. You can imagine the sound of stone on stone. You can imagine dust on the fingers. This was daily work, because hunger came back every day. From this rough powder, people could make a new kind of food. They could add a little water. The powder and water became a thick paste. Now think of the fire. Early humans knew fire well. Fire gave warmth at night. Fire kept wild animals away. Fire also changed food. Near the fire, someone could place the paste on a hot stone. It would dry and cook. It would become a flat piece that could be held and eaten. This was an early bread, not tall, not fluffy, just flat and warm. It was easier to carry than loose seeds. It could be shared in small pieces. It could feed a child or an older person or someone who was tired. This is how bread began, in a quiet and practical way. It began as a simple answer to a hard question. How do we make food that lasts a little longer? How do we turn small seeds into something we can hold? As time passed, people learned where grasses grew best. They returned to the same places in the same seasons. They gathered more. They began to store seeds for later, in simple baskets, in clay pots, or in holes lined with stone. Then, slowly, some people stopped moving all the time. They stayed near water and near good land. They built simple homes. They made storage places. They protected food from rain and from animals. When people stayed, they began to plant seeds on purpose. They did not just take from the land, they helped the land produce more. Over many generations, the grains changed. They became larger and easier to harvest. In some places, wheat became important. In other places, barley. In other places, different grains. Each land gave people what it could. Bread grew with these changes. In early villages, life was busy. People worked in fields. They harvested grain. They dried it in the sun. They stored it in jars and bins. Then came the grinding again. Day after day, someone sat with stones and made flour. The work was steady and slow. Bread was still effort, but it brought safety. Grain in storage meant food even when hunting was poor. It meant you could feed many mouths in one home. It meant older people and small children could eat. As villages grew, people traveled between them. They traveled by river and by simple paths. They carried tools. They carried seeds. They carried ideas. A traveler could see a new way to cook dough. In one place, bread might be cooked on a hot stone. In another place, it might be cooked on clay. In another place, it might be cooked inside a covered pot so heat could surround it. In dry places, people learned to make bread thin because thin bread cooks fast and needs less fuel. In colder places, people sometimes made thicker bread because it stayed soft longer near the home fire. In market towns, you could smell bread from far away. A baker might work near a street with a simple oven made from clay or stone. People came with a few coins or with grain to trade. They carried warm bread home under cloth to keep it from drying too fast. In some places, people carried dry bread on long walks. They baked it until it was hard so it would not spoil quickly. A traveler could break it and soften it with water or eat it with dried fruit. On rivers and near coasts, grain also moved by boat. A sack of grain could travel farther than a person could carry it. When people reached a new shore, they brought their grain and their habits. They built a new oven, or they used the stones they found. The bread was not exactly the same, because the land was not the same, but the idea stayed. People also shared knowledge through work and through family life. A person married into a new village and brought their way of making bread. A neighbor watched and learned. A child stood nearby and copied the hands of an adult. So bread moved slowly through the world, not as one single bread, but as many small versions of the same idea. Each generation changed it a little. Some people learned to remove larger pieces from flour so it felt smoother. Some learned that more water could make dough softer. Some learned that a bit of salt could change taste when salt was available. And then came a quiet change that many people noticed. Sometimes, if dough sat for some time, it puffed up. It smelled different. It tasted different. This happened because tiny living things are in the air and on hands. They are on grain and in water. They eat parts of the dough and make gas, and the gas makes the dough rise. Early people did not need big words for this. They only needed to see the result. Bread became lighter. It was easier to chew. So people began to save a small piece of old dough and mix it into new dough. The new dough rose again. This was a simple habit that worked. As towns and cities grew, bread became even more important. A city needs food every day. It needs many ovens and many hands. Some people became full-time bakers. They woke before sunrise. They mixed flour and water in large bowls. They shaped loaves on wooden boards. They watched the oven heat with care. Ovens became stronger and better built. Some ovens could bake many loaves at once. This changed bread again. Bread could be thicker and more even. The outside could be firm, while the inside stayed soft. Bread also became part of daily city life. People bought it on the way to work. Families ate it with simple soups and vegetables. Workers carried it as a meal for the day. Guests were offered bread in a home. Bread felt normal, and that is part of why it lasted. It fit into many kinds of lives. But now we come to the hidden chapter, not a loud story, a quiet human struggle that followed bread for a long time. When bread became the main food for many people, grain became the main thing people needed too. And when grain mattered this much, control over grain mattered. Picture a large storeroom in a town. The air is dry. There are big jars or sacks along the wall. Someone counts. Someone makes marks on a board. Someone guards the door. If one group stored the grain, they could decide how it was used. Grain could become tax. It could become payment. It could become a way to keep workers working. This does not mean every person in power was cruel, but it does mean that bread was not only comfort, it could also be used to control hunger. And for many ordinary people, bread meant long work. Think of the fields. People cut the grain with simple tools. They carry it home in heavy bundles. Then they separate the grain from the dry plant. They do this by shaking it, beating it, and pulling it apart by hand. After that, they dry the grain and store it so it stays safe from rain and animals. Only then does the next job begin. Someone sits down with stones and grinds it into flour. This is slow work. It takes time, and it takes strength. There were also years when harvests failed. Rain did not come. Cold came at the wrong time. Insects ate crops. In those years, people watched their grain stores closely. Bread became smaller. Meals became simpler. Worry sat quietly in the background. So when we say bread is a comfort food, it helps to remember that it also carries the memory of survival. Now let us walk forward, closer to modern life. Over time, tools improved. Mills appeared in many places. Some mills used animals to turn heavy stones. Some used moving water. Some used wind. Flour could be made faster with less hand grinding. Baking also changed. People learned more about heat. Ovens became easier to control. Bakers learned by smell and by touch and by watching how bread changed in the oven. Then the modern world brought factories and large systems. Flour became very fine in many places. In many cities, bread could be made quickly in huge numbers. Yeast became easy to buy, so rising could be planned and timed. Bread could travel far. Bread could sit on shelves for days. You can picture a modern store. Rows of bread in clean packages. Many loaves look the same. You can reach out, pick one up, and walk away. This made life easier for many people. You could get bread without hours of work. But it also created distance. Many people no longer saw the grain fields. They no longer saw the grinding. They did not smell dough rising in a warm corner of a home. The work still existed, but it happened far away. And in the modern world, something else happened too. Some people began to bake again at home. They mixed flour and water in their own kitchens. They waited for dough to change slowly. They used a simple starter, saved from day to day. They did this for taste, but also for a feeling of closeness. Because bread is one of the easiest ways to touch an old kind of life. You can do it with your hands. You can feel flour on your skin. You can watch dough change shape. You can smell bread as it bakes. These are the same kinds of senses people used long ago. And now, my friends, we return to you. Next time you hold bread, hold it for one extra breath. Feel it in your hands. It may be light, but it comes from many steps. Someone grew the grain. Someone harvested it. Someone turned it into flour. Someone mixed it with water and heat. Long ago, these steps happened close to home. A field was nearby. Grinding stones were on the floor. A small fire warmed the night. Bread was made in the same place where people slept. Today, the steps often happen far away. Machines help. Trucks carry flour and loaves. Stores keep bread ready for you. This shows how far human life has moved. We still eat the same basic food, but the path to it is different. Bread has stayed with us because it solves a simple need. It gives steady energy. It is easy to share. It can be made in many ways, in many places. And behind that simple food is a long human habit. Seeds, stones, water, fire, hands that work, hands that share. So if you eat bread later today, eat it slowly. Notice the smell. Notice the warmth, if it is warm. Notice how it feels when you chew it. Then let your mind picture one simple scene. A small fire at night. A person sitting close to it, with a flat stone under one hand. Another stone moves back and forth. Seeds break. A little water is added. A thin piece cooks on a hot surface. A child waits nearby. This is not a big moment. It is a normal moment in early human life. Hello, my friends. Now you can rest again, right where you are. The room is quiet. Your breath is slow. And the story of bread can stay with you in a quiet way. Not like a strong thought, more like a small feeling you remember later. You may forget the details, but you may still remember one simple picture. Seeds, stones, water, and fire. And you may remember this too. Bread was not always easy. For a long time, it was work. It was patience. It was a way to get through one more day.